A 26-year-old woman shot dead by police.
Is the alert able to talk to you?
No, free.
Her name, Breonna Taylor. So what happened? It's just after midnight on March 13th, 2020, and officers with the Louisville Metro Police Department pull into this apartment complex in Louisville, Kentucky. They're here to execute a search warrant in a narcotics investigation. Their target is apartment 4, where Breonna Taylor lives. She helped save lives as an emergency room technician. 2020 was going to be her year.
She felt like 2020 was definitely going to be her year because she was able, everything went the way she wanted it to go. Being able to get her car, being able to start getting enrolled for school, being able to just get her foot out the door again. To be able to get a new beginning.
911 operator Harris, where is your emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Minutes after the raid begins, Breonna Taylor will be dead. Months later, her name has become a rallying cry at protests across the country. Celebrities, athletes, and politicians have called for the officers involved to be held accountable.
Say her name!
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor's life matters.
But authorities have released little information about what happened that night. Some news reports and social media posts have said that police went to the wrong apartment, that Breonna Taylor was asleep when she was shot, that it was a no-knock raid. None of that is true. NBC News pulled together audio, video, documents, and interviews to get a fuller picture of what did happen that March night.
911 operator Harris, where is your emergency?
We need help. A lot of gunshots.
To try to understand why police were there to begin with and how this 26-year-old woman was killed in her own home. It's an ordinary night for Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend Kenneth Walker. The couple, who've been close for years, go to dinner at Texas Roadhouse.
She's literally my best friend. There's nothing we didn't talk about, and I talk to her every single day.
Meanwhile, Breonna Taylor's sister and roommate, Janiyah Palmer, is 2,000 miles away visiting a friend in California. Despite being 6 years apart, the sisters are nearly inseparable.
We basically did everything together. We would go grocery shopping, go hang out with her friends together. Anytime she left the house, I pretty much went with her. I was her shadow.
By about 10 p.m., Breonna Taylor and Kenneth Walker are back at her apartment on Springfield Drive. They settle in to watch a movie in her bedroom. Across town, officers prepare for the raid. This whiteboard shows Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, Officer Miles Cosgrove, and Officer Brett Hankeson are on the team going to execute the search warrant for Breonna Taylor's apartment. All 3 officers would end up firing their weapons that night. This warrant and internal documents indicate police had evidence that the target of their investigation, a man Breonna Taylor had dated, received mail at her house and had listed her address as his own.
This is Sergeant Amanda Seeley of the Louisville Metro Police Department's Public Integrity Unit. Today's date is Wednesday, March 25th, 2020. This will be a recorded statement from Sergeant John Mattingly.
She possibly held dope for him, received the packages, and held his money.
Police did obtain a no-knock warrant for Taylor's apartment, which has been widely reported. But Sergeant Mattingly says police concluded it was a soft target, so they would instead knock and announce themselves. At least 7 officers showed up that night with a battering ram. It's 12:35 a.m. and Breonna Taylor has just dozed off. Kenneth Walker is barely awake beside her.
We're home. In the bed, it's 12 at night. Our day's over.
Officers arrive at the apartment complex. Mattingly says he's in plain clothes with a vest that reads police. They line up. Mattingly is to the left of Taylor's front door, with Officer Cosgrove and another officer behind him. Officer Hankeson and the other officers are on the right.
I knocked on the door, banged on it. We didn't announce the first couple because our intent was not to hit the door. Our intent was to give her plenty of time to come to the door because they said she was probably there alone.
Mattingly says they banged on the door 6 or 7 times.
There's a loud bang at the door. She pops up out of sleep. It scared her to death. Me too. Like, who is that? First thing she said was, who is it? No response. So we like, what the heck? So then I grabbed my gun, which is legal. Like, I'm licensed to carry everything.
So at that point, we started announcing ourselves, please come to the door. Please, we have a search warrant.
Here, accounts diverge. Walker says they ask who it is and hear no response. Mattingly says the officers repeatedly announce police. A minute after the first knock, police make the call to hit the door with a battering ram.
So I looked at Mike and said, go ahead. So he hits the first time and it hits right on the door handle and didn't move the door. And every time he hits, people are announcing, please search warrant, please search warrant.
Mattingly says it takes 3 hits before the door flies open.
The door comes off the hinges. So I just let off one shot. I still can't see who it is or anything.
Mattingly describes what he saw as he entered the apartment.
I'm face on about probably 20 feet away, right down the hallway. There's a bedroom door on the right, and there's the male and a female. The male's the closest to the door, so he's to my right. And as I turn the doorway, he's in a stretched out position with his hands with a gun. And as soon as I clear, he fires. Boom.
Again, accounts diverge. Walker says the door is open and he can't see who's breaking into the apartment when he fires the shot. Sergeant Mattingly says he enters the apartment and can see Walker when he's hit. Walker's one shot hits Mattingly in the thigh, according to Mattingly.
As soon as he fired, I fired back. Boom, 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 boom.
Mattingly exits the apartment, then shoots again.
And then reached around, and I think I got 2 more off around the corner of the door.
At 12:42, 911 operators start receiving calls from neighbors who don't seem to realize the police are on scene.
911 operator, guide, where's your emergency? Please get it down. Police down here, they are shooting back. I'm telling you, sir, please hear. Man, they get shot about 7 or 8 times. They right here in front of my house. And I got my grandbaby and my kids in here.
About 30 seconds after the first call, another neighbor dials 911.
The apartments behind me, there was a lot of gunshots just now. There was about 8 or 9. I mean, it just came out of nowhere. And it almost sounded like somebody was shooting back, but I'm not for sure.
A minute into that call, at 12:44, the neighbor says she hears more shots.
Did it sound like it was coming from right in your area? They're still shooting. Still shooting. Come on. Come on. Y'all need to get over here. They're shooting out like crazy.
Wounded, Mattingly says he staggers to the curb. Then he hears his fellow officers shooting.
I could hear all of a sudden boom, 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 boom. Several shots at that point, it seemed like then.
It was a lot of shots. 3 holes in her leg, then on the wall, right behind where she was, there was like 4 holes on the wall.
Breonna Taylor's death certificate shows she was shot 5 times, but we don't know whose bullets hit her. Mattingly says he fires 6 shots from in and around her doorway. Police say Cosgrove fires, we don't know how many times. Hankerson fires at least 10 rounds through this patio door and window, according to police. Some of those go through Breonna Taylor's dining room wall into the next apartment where a pregnant woman lives.
There's bullet holes all the way through the wall, through our glass. The cops are out there yelling to get back in the house. I have a 5-year-old in here, so something needs to be explained to me.
An officer calls for paramedics for Sergeant Mattingly, but the response is delayed.
EMS is around the corner right now. EMS bus up here now. All the way down the street. Tell them to get up here.
Meanwhile, police prepare for a standoff with Kenneth Walker, who they appear to think has a rifle.
Hey, we need someone up here now. I'm ready to barricade with the old rifle. That's like we're in the yard. 8 cars with the long guns, please.
Inside the apartment, Kenneth Walker says he was confused.
What really made me not realize it was the police either, because nobody was rushing in after all of this happened. They all stayed outside, so I'm like, what the heck was that?
Walker calls his mother, who tells him to call 911.
Okay, how old is your girlfriend? She's 26. Brittany. You said 26? Where was she shot at?
I don't know. He's on the grill right now. I don't know.
Okay. You said she's 26. Is she alert and able to talk to you?
No, she's
God, breathe. Help! Oh my God! Yes, help!
Police start calling for Walker to come out.
They keep yelling, come out. So I'm like, okay, it's the police.
An EMS dispatcher radios to see if anyone has responded to Walker's 911 call.
Is there anybody on this field that's out at 3003 Street will never forward that other female that's been shot, 26-year-old female?
It's unclear if anyone responds. By this time, neighbors are filming dozens of officers arriving at the complex. Kenneth Walker backs out of the apartment. Officers have their weapons drawn. At 1 a.m., about 20 minutes after police arrive, they lead Walker away.
You just said you were not in the bed. We were scared. No, we didn't know who was.
It's not clear from EMS records when paramedics reached Breonna Taylor. 6 days later, Kenneth Walker is charged with attempted murder of a police officer. After a national outcry, the charges are dropped. None of the officers there that night has been criminally charged. Sergeant Mattingly and Officer Cosgrove are on administrative reassignment, as is the officer who secured the warrant. Officer Hankeson, who shot through the patio door, was terminated for firing wantonly and blindly and showing extreme indifference for human life. Through their attorneys, the officers declined to comment, as did the Louisville Metro Police Department. According to a lawyer for Breonna Taylor's family, police found no drugs or money in her apartment. State and federal investigations continue amid mounting pressure to prosecute the police who fired.
Hey, this is Nicole. So I'm going to go ahead and touch bases with the Breonna Taylor case because I never touched it. Probably because they never got arrested and they never will, probably. I don't think they hold police officers accountable for anything they really do. I think that it's easy to justify killing someone, rather than hold them accountable for anything, especially police officers. And that's exactly what they do, especially white police officers, And this is my thing with this. They say that they have reasons. They are justified for shooting someone when they're in fear for their lives. Now, if you're in fear because the way somebody walked down the street, they just look like they terrify the hell out of you, then you don't need to be a police officer. Like, if you're that damn scared of somebody, you don't need to be a police officer. It don't make no sense that a person can be having a bad day and it will show on their face. But since they look like they're having a bad day and the police see them, you would be terrified. And that would be enough reason for you to shoot to kill. If you're that afraid of black people, black men in general, then why the hell do you have a badge? I mean, and I think that these police officers need to be trained. I really do. I think they need to be they need to go back to basic training because it's something that they're lacking. Like the fact that they even went to that woman's house at 12 o'clock at night and thought that it was okay for them to bust in her house. It's like it's something wrong with that. They was even gonna charge the boyfriend. Like, it is something wrong. It is. Like, the justice system is way fucked up. I really think that everyone should have been charged, from the police officers to the DA to the judge that signed the warrant. All of them should have been charged because they did not do their job. Their job was to see, like, you got to be able to prove something is going on. Obviously, you guys did not watch this woman's house. You couldn't have watched her house. So therefore, you shouldn't even have a warrant to even go to her house because you had no reason to think that something was going on over at that woman's house. Now you guys are reaching because y'all trying to give the ex-boyfriend plea deals to throw her name in some shit, and he said that he couldn't because she was not involved. You guys had no reason to go to that woman's house to shoot her. I don't care how you dress it up and make it look. She don't even have a record. She has a good job, paying benefits, Hell, she even worked with the police officers. I mean, she's an emergency. It's just I don't know, you guys. I think all of them should be in prison though. I really do. And I was looking at the news earlier, and a lot of the police officers are walking out, and I'm glad. I mean, I am glad. Like, you guys are not doing anything but shooting us. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we do good killing each other already. We don't need y'all to kill us because we already got goddamn black on black crime, and this motherfucker is high. Okay. And we don't need y'all killing us too. Like, we do a good job on killing each other. I'm just saying. And that's fucking sad. But it's the truth. See you guys later.
Police shot and killed Breonna Taylor during a no-knock warrant at her home. Her family is still pleading for criminal charges against the officers who killed her. But we are learning how prosecutors in Louisville included Breonna's name in her ex-boyfriend's plea deal this summer. The attorney for Jamarcus Glover, her ex, says his client was offered a deal if he was willing to implicate her in a, quote, organized crime syndicate. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas joins me now. Danny, all right, this is a lot to break down, so walk us through this. The lawyer also said implicating Breonna was part of the initial plea deal, but her name wasn't part of later drafts. Can you explain how this all works and why they might want Breonna Taylor on the list after she had been killed by police?
If true, this is a tactic that prosecutors will sometimes use to avoid civil liability on the lawsuit side later. So, for example, if they think they have a situation where someone was wrongfully arrested, prosecuted, or even killed by police, they will do anything they can to get something on the record from a defendant or some witness like this to say that, oh, there is some evidence of criminality, because any evidence of criminality gets police one step closer to potential immunity from a civil lawsuit. And that is something that happens fairly often, having defendants plead to a lesser charge when the prosecution probably shouldn't have brought the case in the first place.
Now, Danny, how common is it for a plea deal to have a condition like this, and what sort of pressure does it put on a defendant?
Sometimes plea deals do include a cooperation agreement. In other words, the defendant is agreeing to snitch on his friends or co-conspirators or whatever the case may be. Prosecutors will say they have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, but there are often conditions on plea deals. This is slightly unusual because you're not usually implicating someone who is already dead, because dead people cannot be prosecuted. In this case, if that's what police are doing, if that's what prosecutors are doing, it seems like it would be pretty obviously to avoid the civil liability by painting Taylor as involved in some criminality and getting someone on the record saying that she was.
Now, let's talk about Kenneth Walker's civil case. He's suing the city and their police department over his arrest the night Breonna Taylor was shot and killed by police. Tell us about that.
It's really an interesting case because it's a traditional assault and battery case on the one hand, even though he wasn't as grievously wounded, mortally wounded like his girlfriend. Kenneth Walker was the subject of that not and announce warrant. He says there was no announcement. But it's also very interesting because he's bringing what's called declaratory judgment. He's asking the court to say, look, Kenneth Walker was covered by stand your ground, and that means that he's immune from prosecution. Even though the prosecutor has dismissed the case for now, he's dismissed it without prejudice. That means that they could bring it again, theoretically, if the investigation turns up some evidence of criminality. Kenneth Walker's not only looking for money, but he's also looking for a court to say that unequivocally he has immunity from prosecution because of Kentucky's stand your ground law.
Now, we actually got a chance to hear from him yesterday. Let's take a listen.
All of a sudden, someone started beating on the door. They refused to answer when we yelled, "Who is it?" 15 minutes later, Breonna was dead from a hail of police gunfire, and I was in police custody. The police arrested, jailed, and charged me with murder of a police officer. I was raised by a good family. I am a legal gun owner, and I would never knowingly shoot a police officer. Breonna and I did not know who was banging on the door, but the police know what they did.
So, Danny, you just broke this down a little bit for us, but let's talk here about the case he's making and how likely he is to win.
You heard Kenneth Walker saying the police know what they did. I mean, key in his civil case, he has to demonstrate, I see him freezing a little, he has to demonstrate that the police knew they were doing something wrong. Not just that they made a mistake, because if they made it in good faith and it was an accident, then they can escape liability. He has to show that they did something deliberate and that it was they knew it was wrong when they did it. It's a very, very high bar to hold police responsible, much higher than just holding members of the public responsible when they do something wrong and injure somebody. So that is clearly the mission here, and you can hear it in Kenneth Walker's statement here. He knows, I'm sure, that he has a high bar to clear, and he and his lawyers are going to try and make it.
Now, Kentucky's Attorney General Daniel Cameron is overseeing the Breonna Taylor case, and he spoke about it this weekend. Let's now listen to that.
We are looking under every stone, leaving no stone unturned as it relates to this investigation. Again, a thorough and fair investigation is what is deserved by all. We also have the strength of relationships with the FBI to receive this ballistics report and information that can be critical to our analysis.
So what exactly could that ballistics report reveal?
The ballistics are key in this case. Walker's team has indicated that his bullet, the one he fired, doesn't have any evidence of blood on it. Now, that's pretty important because if the police are alleging that Sergeant Mattingly was actually hit by Walker's bullet, that strengthens their case for use of deadly force. But be advised, police don't have to get hit with a bullet in order to be able to use deadly force. If in a case where a defendant is shooting into the air, that could possibly create a reasonable fear of deadly force by the police, warranting their own deadly force. But if it's the case, if it comes out that the police were wrong about the bullet striking Sergeant Mattingly, if it turns out the police may have even shot Sergeant Mattingly accidentally in a friendly fire situation, then both legally and terms of a public image of this case, it will not look good for the police.
All right, Danny, thank you for breaking that down. Complicated there, and thank you for helping us out.
Thank you.
13th, 186 days ago, a tragedy beset our community with the death of 26-year-old Breonna Taylor. Her death has ignited a movement in Louisville and the nation for racial justice, sending thousands into our streets and cities all across the country and the world, all crying out for justice for Breonna. And while her death was a tragedy for so many, let's remember that Breonna was first a daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, a niece, a girlfriend, a friend, and a co-worker. And for those who knew her, Breonna's death is personal, the pain is visceral, and the loss ever more devastating. Tamika Palmer, Breonna's mom, says Breonna was a quick student, a hard worker, and an old soul, that she was the glue of the family. Breonna was loved. I cannot begin to imagine Ms. Palmer's pain, and I'm deeply, deeply sorry for Breonna's death. While we await a decision from Attorney General Daniel Cameron on whether or not charges will be filed in this case, my administration is not waiting to move ahead with needed reforms to prevent a tragedy like this from ever happening again. That's why I'm here today with the family of Breonna Taylor to announce that Louisville Metro government has settled the civil lawsuit with her estate. As part of this settlement, Louisville Metro government agrees to make several important policy changes. First, to build stronger community connections between our police officers and the people they serve, we will, 1, establish a housing credit program to incentivize officers to live in certain low-income census tracts within the city. And we will encourage officers to volunteer 2 paid hours every 2-week pay period during their regular work shift at an organization in the community that they serve. Next, as I've said before, we often ask our police officers to not only keep the peace, but to deal with challenges that society has failed to address, from mental health to homelessness to substance abuse and everything in between.
And it is not just the historic $12 million settlement, which, as I understand, is the largest amount ever paid out for a black woman in a wrongful death killed by a police in America.